Brothers and sisters, here we are. I'm sitting here and I'm smiling right now, and you're wondering what the correlation is to the topic, which is about depression, sadness, and hopelessness. So then the question is, well, what do I have to smile about? Well, if people look at the situation, as Rashid made mention in the beginning, at first glance you would think that things are not so good right now. People are losing their jobs, 200 people being laid off from here, 100 people being laid off from there, 53,000 being laid off from Citibank and other companies. 53,000 people is a lot of people. So when you look at it at first glance, it looks like ruin, sadness, hopelessness, depression. Now that's what we're talking about outside of the home. We didn't include sickness, a'udhu billah, of the children, walaikum salam, of the wife, of the husband, or other family members. We didn't talk about the fact that your car goes down and you're not able to replace whatever parts are needed or necessary. We're not talking about visa problems. We haven't talked about a lot of different things, but we're going to look at all of this, and inshallah, we're going to try to look at our situations from a different aspect before we walk out of here today. That's what our goal is, that we will look at our situation and then you will be smiling also, inshallah. And hopefully no one will be crying. Or at least not, crying out of fear of Allah, but, not because I depressed you more or, anything like that. But first we're going to start, and I'm going to talk about Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Now, this young brother right here, he's laughing just like me. So, I'm going to ask him a question. Do you know who Salahuddin al-Ayyubi was? You don't know. You don't know. Okay, what about your partner sitting next to you? He's all teeth today. What about him? You know who Salahuddin was? No? Okay. All right. Well, what about this one sitting behind him? Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Do you know who he was? Yeah. Oh, well, that sums it up. Anybody can anybody help him out a little bit? How was it, sister? He was the one who liberated Jerusalem. He was a mujahid. He was a leader. He was one of the great military leaders in the history of mankind. Interesting. Wow. If we had a Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, you would think that if I said Salahuddin al-Ayyubi is downstairs in the parking lot and he's looking for volunteers to help him to do whatever he wants to do, everybody would raise their hand, right? Who would refuse? There were a lot of people who refused. In his lifetime, everybody didn't follow Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Actually, when he chose to take on the Crusaders, many people said that he was nuts. He was crazy. He said because at that time the Muslim Ummah was similar to the way that it is today. It was divided. Every mantika, every location, every district had its own Amir al-Mu'mineen. I don't want anybody to think that Salahuddin al-Ayyubi was fighting at a time with a unified ummah and he was at the head of it. That's absolutely incorrect and false. Every group had its own leader, their own leadership. They wanted to do their own thing and they weren't going to listen to anybody. The Khilafah was in Baghdad at the time, but it was Shafawi. It was something that was just, that's where the leadership is. Okay, fine. So when Salahuddin Ayyubi got the idea that he was going to take on the Crusaders at that time, some people said that he was crazy because Europe, which was together and unified at that time, that they will send that they are a sea with no shore. So now I want you to understand that we're just normal people. Okay? We're not pieces of iron, and neither was Salahuddin Ayyubi. Jazakallah khair. So sometimes when people will say things, it may dampen your spirit. Try to picture it. When you've got people telling you, some of them at that time were people of knowledge. You're crazy, there's no hikmah in this, don't do this. Everybody got the mental picture in mind? Okay. The Europeans sent 300,000 warriors. If there were 300 people that arrived at the Dubai airport with bats and chains, just with your name on it, 300, that's all, how would you feel? They're all coming to see you. None of them are happy. Bad news, right? Okay. It was so large that the army couldn't all come by sea. Some of the army had to come by land. Okay? One of the leaders of the army was Richard the Lionhearted, the King of England. Big man. Okay? So you had the ulama, you had the top people of that time leading the charge against Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Okay? Now, everybody here has heard the name Salahuddin al-Ayyubi before. Why is his name a household name? If Salahuddin al-Ayyubi had come at a time when the Muslims were at their pinnacle, were at their zenith, they're at their top level of strength, perhaps what he did wouldn't be so impressive, would it? Not really. Because they had 300,000, the Muslims had 1 million, of course they were supposed to win. But then when you also see the difficulty that was there, that faced him at the same time, you sit there and you say, wow, interesting. Take that story and try to picture all of the ajr that Salahuddin al-Ayyubi would have garnered from the struggle that he went through at that time. Got the mental picture? Take it and put it on the side. We're going to move on to another story. We're talking about preparation. Yawmul Bu'ath. In Al-Medina, there were 2 tribes. There were 2 tribes that ultimately made up the Ansar. Can anybody tell me one of the tribes? Raise your hand. One? Al-Aus. And? Al-Khazraj. That's right. These were the 2 tribes. Now this day of Bu'ath, these 2 tribes had been fighting each other for a very long time. I mean, I want you to picture that you're raising your children to fight Aus or you're fighting Khazraj. This was going on for a long time. And this was basically their profession. They would fight and kill. I don't mean they would go out in a fist fight. They would go out and cut each other's heads off, slit each other's throats. These were hard people from the desert. Can you imagine? And they went through this year after year after year. Now,